I grew up in Chatham, and my family's been there for generations. I grew up on Main Street and went off to college at Hampton-Sydney, and then went to law school in Mississippi, and was blessed, really truly blessed, to be able to come back to Chatham after law school, because as Brenda said, so many people that I grew up with, and so many people that you all know, you know this story so well, so many people that I grew up with would have loved to have been able to come back to Chatham, loved to have been able to come back to Danville in Southside Virginia and raise their family and make a living in Southside Virginia, but they couldn't do it. They can't do it because of the tremendous changes that we've seen in our economy over the last 10, 20 years. And so it's affected all of us deeply, and I know it's affected Chase City. I know it's affected Mecklenburg County, and I see it when I walk through Chase City. Chase City, of course, reminds me so much of my hometown in Chatham. It's a small town with big people. It's a place that's got a rich and proud heritage in manufacturing and in agriculture. Both of those things that made Southside Virginia what it is, and I think in many ways what it will be. But I was blessed to be able to come back to Chatham. I went to work first as a prosecutor, a Commonwealth's attorney in Pennsylvania County, an assistant Commonwealth's attorney. I was there for 4 years and then went into a general practice. I then was first elected in 2000 to the Chatham Town Council, and so I have a real appreciation for the hard work that members of, like your mayor and those of you who are members of the Town Council, the hard work that you all do on the Town Council. And I think having that local government experience is so important for anybody who is seeking elective office. I see Jim Jennings on the Board of Supervisors. You know, I applaud those who are serving in local office. In 2001, I was first elected to the General Assembly of Virginia and was in the House of Delegates for 6 years. And for the last 3 years, I've been in the state Senate, and I served with Frank Ruff, and was, of course, in the House of Delegates with Tommy Wright. And during my time in the legislature, the number one issue that we've had to face has been jobs. And during that period of time, I have always fought to bring jobs to Southside Virginia. We've certainly worked so hard at a specific level in attracting specific prospects to come and settle in Southside Virginia through things like our Tobacco Commission and through the Governor's Opportunity Fund and some of the tools that we have in our toolbox to draw industry to Southside Virginia to replenish and try to create jobs where so many jobs have been lost. But certainly on the big picture, the policies that we've adopted in the Virginia General Assembly and in Richmond, I believe over the last 10 years have been good, smart, business-minded policies. And many of them are votes to preserve policies that have made Virginia great and recognized throughout the country as the finest place to do business. And so those are the kinds of policies that I have supported. One of the things I think is very important about Virginia is that we're a right-to-work state. There is no question, but that the thousands of jobs that have been located in Southside Virginia, many of those we would not have if we did not have that quality and have that status as a right-to-work state. And that's something that we've, of course, had to zealously defend in Richmond. And I think that makes among the things that makes Virginia the best place in the country to do business. And so I'm proud of that work. And I'm proud that over the years in the legislature, I've always been endorsed by the NFIB and by the Farm Bureau, the AgPAC, Farm Bureau outfit, and I think those organizations certainly speak to the support that I've given small business, the farm, and the people of my General Assembly district. Let me just talk a few minutes about this election. I think there's no question that this election is the most important election of my lifetime. And I was recently in Fluvanna County and was talking to a gentleman who had flown a B-24 bomber in World War II. He had flown 36 missions, and he was having lunch at this diner, and we got to talking about the election, and I made the statement that I just made about this being an important election. And he said, Mr. Hurt, he said, this is the most important election of my lifetime. And I think from coming from a man who has seen what he has seen, has lived through what he's lived through, and sacrificed what he sacrificed in this country, I think the fact that he would make that statement says it all. And I think it really does say what this election is about. And I think when you look at what's going on in Washington now, and you look at it in the context of what business is trying to do in Chase City, in Mecklenburg County, in Southside Virginia, when you look at what's going on in Washington, as it relates to what small business and the small farm are trying to do, they're not compatible. And we've gotten too far afield in Washington, D.C. From those things that made this country great. And I believe at the end of the day, that's what this election is about. It's about jobs. There's no question. So how do we promote job growth in Southside Virginia, in the 5th District, and across America? How do we promote job growth? Do we vote for stimulus packages that spend trillions of dollars that we don't have, and accumulate trillions of dollars in debt that our generation will never pay back? Is that how we promote job growth? Do we promote job growth by becoming indebted to places like China and Japan? That sort of policy, in my opinion, has a direct impact on the ability of our American business to compete, not just here, but across the world. I mean, the idea that China and Japan together own such a large portion of American debt, not only does that make us less competitive, but it also has national security implications as well. Those are the kind of things that I think that we are going the wrong way on in Washington, and that's the kind of policy that I don't think that is good for our country. You stop and think about a vote on cap and trade. During the last presidential election, the president said, if we adopt a cap and trade scheme, it will necessarily cause electric rates to skyrocket. Those were his words. He knew what he was talking about. And we have a Congress, a House of Representatives, that has voted in favor of such a scheme. Now, look at the history of the 5th District. It's got a proud history in manufacturing, textiles, furniture making. All of those manufacturing facilities require a tremendous amount of energy. And you stop and you think about what's happened in the last 20 years to manufacturing in this country, and it strains every brain cell that I have to see how in the world we have a Congress that would vote for a bill that would increase energy costs that much. How in the world do you expect what manufacturing we have left in this country to survive with that sort of mindset in Washington? And that's what we've got. And that's the stated solution. That's the folks in Washington say that's how we're going to create jobs, is by causing energy rates to skyrocket. That doesn't make sense. And it's not what we need. And I believe that we're on the wrong track. The last example I think that I think sums it up is certainly the health care bill. Now, I think everybody would agree that health care in this country we need a system that is improved. I think we would all agree that we've got to reduce the cost of health care and increase the quality of care. The problem with what the health care bill has been adopted and made law in this country is it will do neither. It won't decrease the cost of health care. I mean, we've got the government is going to be running it. We're going to insure 30 million new people. And the president expects us to believe that that health care costs are going to decrease. We know they're going to increase. And those of you in business, and those of you who have gotten I've talked to many people who have seen the dramatic increase in the premiums that they pay for insurance, for health insurance. And that's exactly what most people said would happen. But our Congress didn't believe that. And our Congress adopted this for whatever reason. They said they did it in the name of business, But what they're doing is going to be killing jobs in Southside Virginia. And not only are you going to have increased costs, it's going to make it more difficult for business to do what business wants to do, which is offer good benefits for the employees. It's going to make it more difficult for them to do that, maybe prohibitive. And the paperwork that's associated with that plan is unbelievable. And at the end of the day, what I think we need to do, and what my vision for the future is that we get away from having the government be the answer to every problem, and that we try to get back to some of the principles that made this country great. I think that if we want business to get to work for us in this country, that we need to not increase taxes on them, increase the burdens, but let business keep more of what it makes. Let the individual keep more of what he makes, so that he can, in turn, put that to work to hire the people that need work. We need to not increase the number of regulations on business in every sector of our life. We need to decrease the number of regulations. Now, does that mean that we throw all the regulations out? No. It means that we should be smarter about regulations. The regulations that are necessary should be effective and efficient, and not job killing. And I'm afraid that's where we are. But that's the kind of leadership I think that we need in Washington. And then finally, we've got to get our fiscal house in order. We as individuals do it. We as business people do it. We as farmers do it. The state does it. The local government does it. We all balance our checkbook. We all balance our bills, our budgets. But for some reason, the federal government can't. And that's got to stop. We have got to have a balanced budget. And if it means cutting spending, which it does, it's got to happen. We have got to reduce the spending in this country. We can't be spending $1.7 trillion in deficits, and we can't be accumulating $13 trillion in debt. And our GDP is $14 trillion. This is the most important election of our lifetime, because if we don't get it right, in my humble opinion, we will be passing this on to our children and to our grandchildren. And that's not right. It's just not right. And if you look to see what's happened in European countries, if you look to see what's happened in Greece, anybody who says that it can't happen here, I don't think is being honest, and they don't know history, and they don't read the newspaper, because it can happen. And it will happen, in my opinion, if we don't get our fiscal house in order. And I think that's why this election is so important. Let me just close by saying this, and I'd love to answer some questions, any questions that you might have. But I love being here at this place, at this community center, and just in the course of getting to know Chase City and the nice folks here, I've learned a little bit about the Estes family and understand what they represent in this community. They represent all the fine people that are here. They represent, in my mind, the kind of generous spirit and hard work that is very common in Southside Virginia. It's very common in places all across the 5th District, whether it's in Chase City or in Clarksville or in Cambridge or Victoria or South Hill, whether it's in Chatham, Virginia, or Lynchburg, or in Charlottesville, all across the 5th District. You have people who love their community, who love their families, who work hard and give back. And that's what I love about the story about the Estes family and how the trucking business was started here. The idea, and we know the family, but each of us can think of people like this in our own family. There was a generation that went before us, a generation that grew up in the Depression, went to war, saved the world, came back to these small towns all across Southside Virginia, and went to work. They didn't come back with their hands out. They came back with one thing in mind, and that was to live within the blessings of liberty that they had purchased with their own sacrifice. They came back and they built their churches and they built their Ruritan clubs. They built their Rotary clubs, they built their businesses, they built their farms all up and down main streets all across Southside Virginia. They lived modestly, and they sacrificed. And they did it for one reason. They didn't do it to promote themselves. They did it for the sake of the next generation. They did it for the sake of their children and their grandchildren. And that's truly, in my opinion, the American spirit.